So, uh, why do public policies that are literally designed to save our lives almost always trigger the exact opposite reaction from the public?
Right. It's such a massive paradox.
It really is. I mean, just think about the era we are living in right now. We live in a society that obsessively and honestly sometimes aggressively guards personal freedom.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Any kind of mandatory social control just instantly meets this wall of resistance.
Yeah, and if you tell a grown adult they have to put on a piece of safety gear to do something they've literally been doing their whole life.
Well, the assumption from policymakers is that this adult will just stubbornly abandon the activity altogether.
Right, like they assume we're so fiercely protective of our autonomy that we'll just act out of pure spite.
Exactly. But the truly terrifying part isn't even that human rebellion. It's not the pushback itself.
No, the real issue is that out of sheer fear of this hypothetical pushback, our lawmakers just abandon the safety rules entirely.
They preemptively surrender. Yeah, they just give up before they even try. And the price for that hesitation, it's paid in emergency rooms. It's just oceans of completely avoidable human tragedy.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We're going right into the absolute core of this behavioral paradox.
And we have some incredible data to unpack today.
We really do. We're looking at a highly restricted 20-year trove of public health data. And this data just completely shatters our most cynical assumptions about how society actually reacts to mandatory rules.
It really is a goldmine for understanding human behavior.
So to start, I want you to picture something in your mind. Imagine a completely blank white screen. And dead center is just an isolated gray bicycle helmet.
Just stark and minimalist.
Right, exactly. And right next to that helmet is a bright red question mark, just a bold red circle with a question mark inside it.
That is the perfect mental image for what we're tackling.
Can a law that is literally designed to save lives actually destroy a massive national pastime?
That's the million-dollar question right there.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. We're looking at a massive study conducted by two economists, Christopher Carpenter and Kesey Warman. And they got their hands on an unprecedented data set out of Canada.
Yeah, we're talking about tracking nearly 800,000 individuals over 2 full decades.
800,000 people. That is just a staggering sample size.
It is. They wanted to figure out exactly what happens to the behavioral code of human beings when the state actually forces them to protect themselves.
But to really understand the stakes here, we need to ground this in the reality of the danger first. The lethal danger versus the fear of regulation.
Right, because the numbers are just completely shocking.
So imagine a bar chart, a really simple bar chart showing emergency room visits for sports injuries. You've got this towering red bar for bicycles, and it just absolutely dwarfs all the other sports.
It's not even close.
In the United States, we have over 66 million adults who ride bicycles. They commute, or they ride for fun, or they use those city bike shares.
66 million.
Which is a huge chunk of the population. Huge. But here is the literal slap-in-the-face fact. Bicycling puts more people in the emergency room for severe head trauma than any other sporting activity.
It outpaces activities that we traditionally associate with massive physical risk.
Exactly. I mean, it almost doubles the number of head injuries caused by American football.
Yeah, the data shows over 85,000 emergency room visits a year for bike-related head injuries, compared to roughly 46,000 for football.
Wait, 85,000 versus 46,000? That just feels so anti-intuitive.
It does, right?
I mean, football is a sport literally engineered around high-speed, violent collisions between giant human beings. Bicycling is like what you do on a Sunday morning to grab a coffee. How is it double?
Well, it really comes down to the physics of the environment. In football, the impacts are expected, right? The athletes are conditioned to take a hit.
Right, they're braced for it.
Exactly. And crucially, they are wearing highly engineered protective gear on a somewhat forgiving surface. But a bicycle crash on a city street, that's an unexpected loss of control.
Where an unprotected human skull meets solid asphalt.
Or the metal grille of an SUV at 20 miles an hour. The energy transfer directly to the brain is just catastrophic.
Oh, man, when you lay the numbers out like that, it just feels like a massive glitch in our societal logic.
It absolutely does, because any rational person looking at 85,000 severe head injuries a year would ask the obvious question.
Right, like surely there are strict laws in place across the country. I mean, we mandate seatbelts.
We penalize texting while driving.
Exactly. So naturally, we must require adults riding in traffic to wear helmets, right?
And here is the shocking American reality. Not a single U.S. state has dared to implement a mandatory all-edge bicycle helmet law.
Wait, not one state. With 85,000 head injuries a year, no state legislature has stepped up.
Zero. I mean, a few local municipalities have tried, but at the state level, it is considered a political third rail.
They just won't touch it.
Lawmakers are utterly paralyzed by the fear of public backlash.
I have to play devil's advocate here because this just seems entirely irrational. We have laws dictating the structural safety of the cars we buy. We have laws about where you can physically cross the street.
Right, jaywalking laws.
Yeah. So why the absolute hesitation to require a commuter to put a piece of foam and plastic on their head?
Well, the hesitation comes from this fierce, coordinated pressure campaign. It's from cycling activists and urban planners, and honestly, surprisingly, from economists.
Economists. What do they care about bike helmets?
They care about behavioral models. For decades, they issued these dire warnings about what they call the rebel adult.
The rebel adult.
Yeah. The core of their argument was that forcing adults to wear helmets would instantly assassinate all these booming city bike share programs.
So if you put a giant red downward arrow pointing at a bike share icon, that's basically their prediction. Total collapse.
Exactly. They argued that the inconvenience of carrying a bulky helmet around all day would just ruin it.
Or even just the vanity of not wanting helmet hair before a morning meeting.
Right. They swore that people would simply stop riding entirely. The bikes would just rust on the city racks.
That's fascinating. But wait, they actually took it a step further, didn't they?
They did. They claimed that the cardiovascular health benefits of a population cycling to work actually far outweigh the risk of head injuries.
Oh, I see. So if you mandate helmets, they argue, you trigger a massive public health crisis of obesity and heart disease.
Because people will just revert to sitting in cars or sitting on the couch?
So they're essentially saying the cure is worse than the disease.
Yeah.
Yes, we might save a few thousand skulls from cracking, but we'll kill tens of thousands more slowly through sedentary lifestyles.
That is exactly the argument. And they bolstered this with a wildly counterintuitive theory known as risk compensation.
Okay, let's unpack risk compensation. Because I've heard this in other contexts. Is this the idea that making someone safer actually makes them more dangerous?
Yeah, exactly. Some experts literally argued that if you put a helmet on an experienced adult, that will suddenly feel this false sense of invincibility.
Like they suddenly think they're Superman just because they have foam on their head.
Right. The theory argues that a helmeted rider will take corners faster, weave through heavy traffic more aggressively, and just take risks they never would have taken bareheaded.
So instead of a cautious rider, you inadvertently create a reckless one?
Precisely. And some studies even suggested that drivers actually pass closer to cyclists who are wearing helmets.
Wait, why would a driver do that?
Because subconsciously the driver assumes the cyclist is more experienced and less fragile.
Oh, wow. So the argument was that mandating helmets would actually cause more accidents and be a net negative for public safety.
Yeah, that was the theoretical panic, and it totally paralyzed lawmakers.
So you have this towering mountain of actual bleeding head injuries in the ER on one side, and on the other side you have this theoretical panic about obesity and reckless invincible cyclists. And for decades, the theoretical panic won out.
It did. The laws were just never passed.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because while America was paralyzed by this debate, Canada was quietly running a massive real-world experiment.
It really is the ultimate secret social laboratory.
Let's picture a minimalist map of Canada right now, just stark outlines. And suddenly, 4 specific provinces start glowing with these stark red circles.
Those are our test subjects. Starting in the mid-90s, 4 provinces like British Columbia and Nova Scotia bravely implemented mandatory all-age helmet laws.
Meaning it didn't matter if you were a 6-year-old learning to ride in a park or a 45-year-old banker commuting downtown. You get on a bike, you put on a helmet, or you face a penalty.
Exactly. But crucially, the rest of Canada served as the perfect control group.
Because places like Ontario only pass laws for kids, right?
Right. Or some provinces passed no laws at all. This gave researchers the holy grail of statistical analysis.
An organic, localized experiment with a massive, culturally similar control group built right in.
And that's when economists Carpenter and Warman stepped in. They gained access to a highly confidential, restricted public health data set.
And just to emphasize the scale, here we are talking about tracking nearly 800,000 individuals over 2 full decades, from 1994 to 2014.
This wasn't just a quick phone poll. They tracked exercise habits, commuting methods, health outcomes, demographics, everything.
So if there is an absolute truth to be found about human compliance, It is buried in those records.
Without a doubt.
So let's build the tension here. The laws pass in those 4 provinces. What happened to the adults? Did they throw their bikes in the trash? Did the bike share economy implode like the critics promised?
The data fiercely slaps down that theoretical panic.
Slaps it right in the face.
Absolutely. After the total population laws passed, adult cycling participation and riding duration saw no statistically significant drop.
No drop at all.
None. The trend line remained completely stubbornly flat.
Imagine that visual for a second. You have a flat, unwavering trend line. It crosses a dramatic vertical dashed line that represents the year the law passed, and the line just keeps going flat, unbothered.
It's a beautiful visual of human routine overriding minor friction.
So people did not surrender their mobility just because society added a layer of physical constraint? The doommongers were entirely wrong.
They were fundamentally wrong. Humans are not just simple, hyper-rational economic actors who quit the moment an activity gets slightly more annoying.
Right. If I have a routine where I bike 3 miles to the office every morning because it avoids traffic, I might complain about the new helmet rule.
You might tweet about how annoyed you are.
Oh, I definitely would. But it's not going to make me completely rewire my entire morning commute, buy a car, and sit in gridlock. The foundational utility of the bicycle is still there.
Exactly. The foundational utility overrides the new friction.
Okay, so that clears a massive hurdle. They didn't quit riding. But that poses the next logical hurdle. Did they actually wear the helmets?
Right, because if they just dodged the cops, the flat ridership numbers don't mean anything for safety.
Exactly. Did they just ignore the mandate?
Well, this is where the data drops an absolute numerical shocker. The probability of an adult putting on a helmet every single time they rode skyrocketed by 50% to 190%.
Wait, 190%.
Yes.
Let me just visualize this. Picture a tiny little column representing helmet use before the law. And suddenly, right next to it, this massive column shoots upward, dwarfing it completely. And at the very top is a bright red, plus 190%.
That is exactly what the data looks like. In absolute terms, the number of law-abiding riders surged by nearly 24 percentage points.
That is just an unbelievable leak for a behavioral intervention.
It's massive because before the laws, adult helmet use was abysmally low. It was often under 10%.
So out of 100 people, maybe 10 are wearing them, and suddenly it's 35 or 40 people consistently wearing them. The law completely rewired their daily routine.
It proved that adults are vastly more willing to bow to a logical public health mandate than we give them credit for.
What's fascinating here is the why. Why did so many stubborn adults fold so quickly? It can't just be fear of a $50 traffic ticket.
No, it goes much deeper. It's fundamentally about the psychology of social permission.
Social permission. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, before a law exists, choosing to wear safety gear, especially something visible like a helmet, can carry a subtle social stigma.
Well, for sure. If you're the only one wearing a helmet, you look nervous. You look overly cautious.
You stand out. But the moment a government mandates it, the social calculation flips entirely.
Right, you're no longer the weird, overly cautious person. You're just a normal citizen following the law.
Exactly. The mandate provides psychological cover. The state acts as the bad guy, so the individual doesn't have to feel awkward.
That is such a profound insight. The law actually liberates you from the social anxiety of looking uncool. You just shrug and say, hey, it's the law.
But we need to look closer at who these individuals actually were. Because when the researchers dug into the demographics, they found a shift that completely shatters our core assumptions.
Yes, let's talk about this demographic flip. Because if you ask me to guess who obeyed this new safety law, the fastest, my gut instinct points to one specific group.
Right, the older, highly educated folks.
Exactly. You'd assume it's the academics, the professionals, the people who understand actuarial risk and have a mature fear of their own mortality.
And the data proves that assumption entirely wrong.
Another slap in the face.
A huge one. The explosive growth in helmet usage was driven massively by the 18 to 35-year-old demographic.
The youth?
The youth. And specifically, it was driven by those with lower levels of formal education.
Wait, really? So picture an infographic here. We have a young, blue-collar worker with a massive green upward arrow above them. And next to them is an older, wealthy academic with just a tiny little arrow.
That's the exact breakdown.
The young and less formally educated fell in line the fastest. How do the researchers explain that? It completely shatters the wisdom of age myth.
It comes down to the malleability of youth and shifting cultural norms. Think about an older adult. They have decades of entrenched behavior.
Right. If you've been riding without a helmet since 1975, Your habits are set in stone.
Exactly. You've survived this long without cracking your skull, so your personal risk assessment overrides the new law. It's survivorship bias.
They think my skill protects me, not a piece of plastic.
Precisely. But the 18 to 35-year-olds are actively growing up alongside shifting cultural norms.
They grew up with mandatory seatbelts and smoking bans.
Their baseline for state intervention is higher. They are vastly more malleable to new social safety disciplines. Social disciplines simply works best on the young.
Okay, but what about the education aspect? Why did lower formal education correlate with higher compliance? Is it just harsh economics? Like an $80 ticket is a minor annoyance to a rich academic, but devastating to a blue-collar worker.
That is a crucial mechanism. Highly educated, high-income professionals often exhibit this sense of elite exceptionalism.
Meaning they think the rules are for other people.
Right? They view a fine as just the price of admission for their convenience. But working-class individuals have a much more pragmatic relationship with authority. They literally can't afford the luxury of ideological rebellion.
Wow. Elite exceptionalism versus working-class pragmatism? That really reframes who the actual rebel is.
It does, but as much as we are marveling at this data, we have to pause the celebration for a second.
Right, because it wasn't a flawless victory. Let's look at the dark, freezing Canadian winter.
Yes, the friction of winter. This is where the data exposes human vulnerability.
So imagine a visual where two frictions collide. On one side, you have a warm sun icon next to a perfectly flat data line. People are riding happily.
But on the other side, you have a snowflake icon, and next to it, the data line slightly snaps downward. We circle that drop in red and tag it with a minus 11%.
What exactly happened when the temperature dropped?
During the sunny months, everyone complied. But between October and March, the all-age helmet laws did cause a measurable 2 percentage point drop in overall cycling probability.
And because the baseline of winter riders is already so low, that tiny absolute drop equals an 11% relative drop.
Exactly. 11% of the hardcore winter commuters just surrendered.
Why? If they were tough enough to ride in the snow before the law, why did a helmet break them?
It reveals how fragile our decision-making is when you stack frictions. You have policy friction, which is the annoyance of the helmet, and environmental friction, which is the freezing cold.
Right. Imagine trying to strap a rigid, freezing plastic bowl over a thick winter hat using clumsy winter gloves.
It's miserable. And policy friction plus environmental friction equals the exact breaking point where a human says, forget it, I'm taking the bus.
But wait, this plays right into the hands of the critics.
Yeah.
This is exactly what they warned us about. They said, if you stop people from biking, you trigger an obesity crisis.
Yes, they did.
So did these winter dropouts just sit on the couch and get fat?
No, they didn't. And this is where the data set is so beautiful. The researchers tracked body mass index over the 20 years.
And did the BMI budge?
It didn't budge at all. Zero statistical evidence of weight gain.
How is that possible if 11% of them quit a major cardio activity for 6 months?
Because human survival mechanisms are vastly more complex than a rigid economic model. People substitute.
They substituted. Imagine a scale perfectly balanced. On one side, a red block showing dropped winter biking, and on the other, a blue block showing increased indoor exercise.
Exactly. When winter cycling dropped by about 15 minutes per person, the exact same adults significantly spiked their in-home exercise minutes.
They bought treadmills or did yoga in the living room.
They unconsciously compensated. Society adapted to maintain caloric balance. We aren't as fragile as the critics fear.
That is incredible. Okay, so we know they adapted. We know compliance surged. But this brings us to the most profound mystery of the data.
The secret switch.
Yes, what really forced these stubborn adults to change their daily habits? Was it really just the state absorbing the social friction? Or the fear of a ticket?
To find the true driver, the researchers ran a genius variable test. They separated the 800,000 people into two distinct groups.
Okay, let's visualize this. A heavy rusted padlock with a bright, heart-shaped keyhole right in the center. And all around it are faded, ignored traffic tickets. We are looking for the true key.
The two groups were adults with children under 12 in the house versus adults without young kids.
And what did the split reveal?
Adults living with young children increased their helmet use by a full 1/3 more than childless adults.
A third more.
Yes, a 42% spike for parents versus a 32% spike for non-parents. This raises an important question about motivation.
Oh, the emotional truth hits you immediately. They weren't afraid of the police. They were afraid of the judgmental eyes of their own kid.
Exactly. In academia, this is called the role model effect.
The role model effect, right? Imagine a side-by-side bar chart showing this massive leap for parents over single adults tied together with a bold, red line labeled role model effect.
It's the cub protecting instinct. If the law says your 7-year-old has to wear a helmet and you try to ride without one, you are exposed as a massive hypocrite.
And kids have a lethal radar for hypocrisy. They'll just ask Daddy, why do I have to wear this if you don't?
And your defense just collapses. You put the helmet on to maintain your moral authority. The absolute zenith of public policy isn't achieved through threats. It's achieved by triggering the biological instinct to protect one's young.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
But is there secondary proof of this?
There is, and it's the most uplifting data point in the study. Let's look at provinces like Ontario that only pass laws for kids.
Okay, so the adults are legally exempt. Zero state threat.
Right. But in those places, adult usage still climbed.
Even though the law explicitly said they didn't have to.
Yes. Parents voluntarily shackled their own freedoms just to avoid being hypocrites to their children.
Think about that visual. A flowchart showing a child locked by a rule pointing down to a parent who voluntarily puts a red lock on themselves. We can call it non-mandatory spillover.
It is the ultimate proof of human goodness. We will constrain ourselves to protect the next generation.
So what does this all mean? Let's zoom out to the macro level. Reframing the freedom debate.
Right, because we constantly frame public policy as a brutal zero-sum war between the heavy hand of the state and the sacred freedom of the individual.
Like a chaotic swarm of dots that refuse to be tamed.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, those 800,000 Canadians prove that's a myth. If a policy's core logic aligns with human survival and family protection, society doesn't shatter.
The chaotic dots suddenly align into a neat, powerful slipstream around a red central line.
Exactly. Society digests the rule, adapts smoothly, and evolves.
And I really want to bridge this to the listener's daily life. Because today we spent an hour talking about a piece of foam and plastic for your head.
But the underlying code is identical to tomorrow's biggest challenges.
Imagine a stark white background with 4 minimalist icons side by side. A helmet, an AI computer chip, a factory smokestack, and a virus, all connected by an upward blue trend line.
Look at the looming regulations on AI. Look at hard carbon limits for climate change. Global pandemic lockdowns.
Every single time, the pessimists scream that the economy will die and the human spirit will be crushed.
But the Canadian lesson is clear. Humans possess an astonishing, almost magical capacity for adaptation and substitution. We bend, but we rarely break.
We find parallel paths.
Yeah.
We substitute, we protect our kids. The paper models completely fail to predict our resilience.
They absolutely do.
But wait, we can't just pop the champagne. We have to halt the optimism for a second and look at the unseen.
Yes, we have to talk about the forgotten minority, the flaw in the system.
Picture a massive cluster of blue dots marching upward. But your eye is drawn to a few isolated red dots trapped at the very bottom, circled in red.
The law showed us who won, but who did it leave behind?
Right. What about the older adults without the cub-protecting instinct?
Or the fragile individuals who simply quit going outside altogether when faced with that winter friction?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can't just celebrate the upward trend line of the majority. A truly magnificent public policy must account for those quiet, isolated dots left freezing outside the curve.
It's the ongoing challenge of ethical governance.
So to wrap up this deep dive, let's look at the grand arc of modern civilization.
From forcing drivers to wear seatbelts, to banning smoking in bars, to mandating bicycle helmets.
The unwritten rule of human progress seems to be this. We constantly painfully surrender micro-freedoms in order to buy massive leaps in our collective survival.
We trade a moment of friction for a lifetime of safety. And these 800,000 Canadians are just a tiny microscopic slide in the infinite carousel of human history.
Which leaves us with one final haunting question. Imagine a pure white void. Dead center in a cold gray font, a single sentence fades in.
As you look at the news today, the debates over regulating tech, speech, and biology, ask yourself this.
Are we fighting a brand new war? Or is today's world just blindly repeating the exact same historical script?